When the doctor wouldn't come, the medicine was in the kitchen cabinet, and it worked. 25 remedies these women used without anybody's permission. Several are sold in bottles today, trademark and barcode. You'll find out which ones, and how they made them. I went through 1,600 interviews recorded across 12 southern states between 1936 and 1940, and 2,300 first-hand accounts from those same years. Because almost none of this was in any medical book. It lived in one woman's head, and that woman isn't here to tell it. Number 14 has been sold in the same bottle since 1866. Number 6 was given once a year, on a sugar cube. And number 1 is still on your drugstore shelf, put there by a man whose name you've never heard. For years they told us it was superstition from people with no schooling. But those women weren't guessing. They knew. Number 25, Black Draft. It was on that shelf before your mother was born. Bitter herb powder, senna and licorice, a teaspoon in water Sunday night. By Monday you knew why. She didn't call it a laxative, she called it a cleaning out. This gonna move your bowels like a train. But Metamucil came in a canister, smooth and tasteless. So bitter, lost to easy. That same senna is approved today. Same aisle, different name. $4 a box. That came from a box. The next came off a spoon, and folks still remember it by the crying. Number 24. The spoonful of cod liver oil. Every winter morning the spoon was already poured, because everybody knew what was coming. It smelled like rancid fish. Children cried real tears. It's bitter, but it builds you up. But in 1940, Miles Laboratories put those vitamins in a tablet called One a Day, so the spoon lost. It carried vitamin A and D, what stood between a child and bowed legs. She didn't know the word rickets. She knew her children grew up straight. $10 a bottle now. That one they gave you. The next you wore, and folks smelled you coming from across the street. Number 23. The garlic necklace. Cold weather came and the string came out. Raw cloves tied around a child's neck, under the shirt if he was lucky. He wore it to school, and the children laughed. But Grandmama had her answer. The stronger it smells, the more it's working. But then came the vaccines and the multivitamin bottle, and a garlic string turned backward. So shame killed what sickness couldn't. Garlic carries allicin, and allicin is antimicrobial. That smell was the remedy working. A whole head costs under $1. Garlic smelled bad on purpose. The next smelled good. Number 22. Bay rum. Saturday afternoon, after the shave. A few drops on the face and neck, and the house smelled like bay leaf and clove. It went on mosquito bites, on razor burn, on a child's heat rash. Cool it down, baby. But the drugstore creams came in a tube, white, no smell. So the barbershop lost its perfume, and the cabinet its bottle. Bay oil is anti-inflammatory and still takes the itch out of a bite. Pinod Clubman still makes it, under $10. That one you bought. The next you had to hunt. Number 21. Groundhog oil. This came from no store. The man of the house hunted, and the fat rendered down slow until it ran clear. Kept in a blue jar, it lasted all winter. Rubbed on the chest when the cough wouldn't let anybody sleep. This is old country medicine. But a family with a refrigerator and a drugstore 10 minutes away didn't need to render an animal, so it left with the generation that knew how to hunt it. We don't bring this one back. Almost nobody alive still knows how. That came off an animal. The last one in this stretch came straight out of the ground, and it held broken bones. Number 20. Red clay from the creek. A child falls out of a tree, and the ankle swells. No x-ray, no emergency room, but there's a creek behind the house with red clay on the bank. You brought it up in a bucket, worked it to a paste, and braced the joint with 2 sticks. This gonna hold it while it heal. But x-rays reached the county hospitals, and with them the certainty of knowing if the bone was broken. For a fracture, we don't bring this one back. But that paste wasn't ignorance. It was the only splint available to people the hospital wouldn't open the door for. And if dirt could hold a bone, wait until you hear about a weed. Number 19. Dandelion root tea. It grew in the sidewalk cracks and nobody wanted it. But she dug the root, washed it, and roasted it in the skillet until it smelled like burnt coffee. This gonna clean your liver out. But then came the pill, and the notion that weed tea couldn't be medicine. So the root went back to weed. Dandelion is studied today for the liver and blood sugar. It doesn't replace what your doctor gave you, but it still grows free in your yard. She pulled that from the ground. The next from the icebox. Number 18. The cabbage leaf. High fever and a child who won't lie still. She opens the icebox, boils the outer leaves 2 minutes, lets them cool, then lays one across his forehead, curved, fitting like it was made for him. Cool you down like ice. When the leaf went warm, she swapped it for another, all night long. But then came the pills that dropped a fever in 20 minutes. So cabbage went back to being supper, and yet it never left. Lactation nurses still recommend it. Chilled. That brought the heat down. The next 3 were for after the heat had already burned you. Worst one first. Number 17. Soot and lard. A child burns himself on the stove. She scrapes soot off the inside of the chimney, works it into lard, and spreads it on. I know it's black, but it pulled the poison out. The burn disappeared under that paste and the child stopped crying. But in the 50s, the antibiotic ointments arrived, white and sterile. $1 anywhere. So the chimney stopped being a medicine chest. We don't bring this one back. Soot in an open wound is infection. That wasn't ignorance. It was the only thing black and dry in a house that had nothing else. That was the worst of the 3. The next was waiting in the henhouse. And this one she got right. Number 16. Egg white. She cracked the egg one-handed, passed the white between the shell halves, and laid it over the burn. Drying, it pulled into a tight, shining film that sealed the skin from the air. This gonna pull the heat out, and it hurt less. But then came the drugstore tube and the word sterile. So a raw egg stopped looking like medicine. She was after the right thing, cool it and cover it. We just know a better first step. Cold running water, 10 minutes, and it cost nothing. That came from the kitchen. The next from the salt box. Number 15. The salt water wrap. A tablespoon of salt in warm water. A soaked gauze, wrapped on the burn, kept wet all night. Keep it wet, keep it warm. But then came the colored gels and the creams with commercials, and salt water looked like nothing. So it stopped. And this deserves saying slow. What a hospital uses to clean a wound is saline. Salt water. They gave it a Latin name, sealed it in a bottle, and sold it back at $4 a bag. She had it on the kitchen table the whole time. That was in your kitchen. The next has been in the same bottle since 1866. Number 14. Witch hazel. Here's number 14. Dickinson's has been sold since 1866, 1 year after the end of slavery, and the bottle today looks much like the old one. You soaked a cotton pad and put it on. On hemorrhoids, on tired legs, on the burn after a shave. This gonna shrink that right up. But then came the brands with commercials, and the word medicated on the front. So the plain bottle went to the back of the cabinet. We stopped buying it. We never stopped needing it. It has tannins, it's anti-inflammatory, and the FDA lists it safe. $5, next to the rubbing alcohol. You can buy that today. The next rode in your granddaddy's back pocket, until one morning in 1964 ended it. Number 13. The tobacco poultice. A child steps on a bee barefoot in the yard, and granddaddy, without getting out of the chair, pulls the chewing tobacco from his pocket, works a little in his mouth, and presses it on the sting. Spit on it. Press it hard. 5 minutes of thumb pressure, and the child stopped crying. It worked. Nicotine does dull pain. But on January 11, 1964, the Surgeon General released a report that changed what this country thought about tobacco overnight. So pocket medicine became the thing that kills you. We don't bring this one back. But that man had nothing else in his pocket, and a grandbaby crying at his feet. That came from a pocket. The next came off a plant by the back door, and it's in your drugstore right now. Number 12. Aloe and cayenne. It was planted by the back door, and it wasn't decoration. You cut a leaf, scraped out the cold pulp, and shook a pinch of cayenne over it, rubbed into a knee, a shoulder. The hands of a woman who'd been sewing 40 years and couldn't close them anymore. The heat draw the pain out. But in the 70s, the anti-inflammatory pill arrived, and folks wanted something they could take with water. So the plant stayed out back, decoration after all. And here's the good part. Capsaicin, out of that same cayenne, is in the pain creams sold in every drugstore in America. $9 a tube. Hers cost nothing. That heat healed you. The next could kill you. Number 11. Kerosene and lard. Chest full, a cough that won't let anybody sleep, and a kerosene lamp on the table because there's no power. 1 part kerosene, 2 parts lard. Rubbed into the chest until the skin went red and the room smelled like a filling station. This gonna draw it all out. But then came the vaporizers and the drugstore salves. Same job without fumes. So it went, and thank God for that. We don't bring this one back, and there's no softening it. Kerosene is toxic. But those houses had no drugstore open at 3 in the morning. They had a lamp and a child who couldn't breathe. That was in the lamp. The next was up in the barn, and she apologized before she used it. Number 10. The spider web. A deep cut off a hoe out in the field and the bleeding won't quit. Nobody's stitching that. She went to the corner of the barn, gathered a clean web, and pressed it in until the bleeding stopped. She said it out loud first, knowing how it looked. I know it's nasty, but it stopped the bleeding. But in the 50s came the box of bandages and the tube of ointment, and nobody was choosing the barn over that. It said the web stopped the blood, and the people who lived it swear it did. What we understand now is that the credit belonged to the pressure. Clean gauze and 3 solid minutes does the same. That was done in front of everybody. The next was done behind a closed door. Number 9. The lye soap enema. Nobody discussed this one at the table. Severe constipation was serious in a house with no doctor. She made the soap herself, out in the yard, from wood ash and grease. You shaved a few slivers into warm water. This gonna move everything. It happened in the back room, and nobody asked about it after. But then came the drugstore preparations, measured and sealed, and lye soap went back to the wash. We don't bring this one back. Lye is caustic, but understand what was behind that door. A woman solving with something she made in the yard what cost $3 in aisle 2. She made that one. The next she bought, and it's still on the shelf tonight. Number 8. Camphor. That little brown bottle has been in American bathrooms since the 1800s. Camphor dissolved in alcohol, and that smell anybody past a certain age knows the second it hits. Half hospital, half mint, and it takes you back to a sink you haven't seen in 50 years, rubbed on a fevered forehead, on a bite, on a split lip, cool you down from the fire inside. But then came the fever pills, and nobody rubbed anything on anybody. So it went to the back of the cabinet, and yet they never banned it. They limited the camphor, and with that label it's still sold. $6. Go look tonight. It smells the same. That was drugstore camphor. The next came from Granddaddy's cabinet. Number 7. Whiskey and camphor on the forehead. Here's the other half of that bottle. Camphor crystals dissolved in white whiskey, the kind kept up high that wasn't for drinking. She warmed it in her hands first, then into the forehead and temples of a person who couldn't open their eyes. It stung, then went cold. This gonna cool the fire in your head. And she stayed there, rubbing, saying nothing, until the breathing below her hands changed. But then came the pill, and the pill didn't ask anybody to stand there 20 minutes in the dark. So the remedy went, and took something else with it. But ask anybody who lived it what they remember. They don't remember the smell, they remember the hands. You can bring that part back tonight. It cost you 20 minutes. That was for the head. The next was given once a year, and every child in the house lined up for it. Number 6. Turpentine on a sugar cube. Here's number 6. Once a year, in spring, the line formed in the kitchen. 2 or 3 drops of turpentine on a sugar cube, oldest to youngest. You swallowed it fast. It tasted like pine and paint. Eat it quick. Don't let it burn your tongue. It was for worms, a real problem in houses with no running water and children barefoot all summer. But then came the drugstore worm medicines. No taste, the dose printed on the bottle. So the line in the kitchen ended. We don't bring this one back. Turpentine is toxic, a hardware store solvent. And the distance between the dose that helped and the dose that hurt was one woman's hand, counting drops by lamplight. Telling it is not recommending it. It's recognizing what a mother did when nobody would sell her better. That came once a year. The next was worn all winter. Number 5. The asafoetida bag. A little cloth pouch, hand-sewn, hung around the neck under the clothes. Inside it, a resin that smelled like rotten garlic and sulfur. So strong that children sat by themselves at school. You wore it from November until the cold broke, against croup, measles, whooping cough. Smells bad but keeps the devil sickness away. But in 1955 the polio vaccine was licensed, and this country decided sickness got stopped in a doctor's office, not around a child's neck. So the bags came off, and nobody sewed another. But be honest about what it really did. It kept people 3 feet away from you, all winter, in a crowded schoolhouse. In the middle of an epidemic, that isn't superstition. That's what we spent the last few years calling distance. That kept you well. The next was for when you weren't. And it still beats half of what's sold today. Number 4. Onion and honey syrup. You sliced a red onion thin, layered it in a jar with honey, and closed it tight. 3 days in the cold. And what came out wasn't onion and it wasn't honey. It was a thick golden syrup. One metal spoon, passed hand to hand through the whole house from December to March. This gonna loosen that chest. But in the 60s came the drugstore cough syrups with codeine, which shut a cough down cold. So the jar came out of the icebox and never went back. And this is the hardest part to believe. It's been studied, and honey beats several of the syrups in your drugstore right now. Pediatricians recommend it again, after the first year of life. It never stopped working. We just stopped making it. 1 onion, 1 jar of honey, 3 days. The whole house took that one. The last 3 nobody explains. Number 3. The mustard plaster. When somebody in that house came down with pneumonia, it wasn't a bad winter. It was a real chance that person did not see March, so she made the plaster. 1 part mustard powder, 4 parts flour, water worked to a paste, laid across the chest. It burned. It truly burned. Hold still, it's drawing the sickness out. And she took it off before the skin blistered, because she knew how to read that moment. She'd learned it from her own mother, but after the war penicillin came home with the soldiers, and pneumonia was cured with a shot in the arm. So the mustard came off the chest and went back to the kitchen. And it has to be said out loud, that was the best news this community got in 100 years. A remedy dying because something better arrived is no loss. It's what she was praying for. Everybody had that one. Everybody remembers the next. Number 2. Castor oil. I don't have to explain this one. Hearing the name brought the taste back, and you haven't touched it in 50 years. You warmed the bottle in a pot of water, soaked a flannel, laid it on the belly, half an hour. That was if you were lucky. If you weren't, the spoon came out. This gonna clean you out from the inside. And there was no getting away from it. In that house, the spoon was not up for discussion. But in the 70s, the pediatricians said enough of giving it to children by the calendar, so the spoon ended. What's still alive is the flannel. Warm castor oil on the belly is still used. $8 a bottle. The flannel, yes. The spoon, no. And that brings us to number 1. The only one that didn't die. Number 1. Vicks VapoRub. It's still at your drugstore. Same blue jar, same smell, for more than 100 years. Think what that means after everything you just heard. 24 remedies, buried, banned, or replaced. And this one they put in a jar and sold back to you. Here's the part nobody tells you. A North Carolina pharmacist named Lunsford Richardson stirred menthol into petroleum jelly in the back of his shop. In 1912, he put his brother-in-law's name on the label, Dr. Joshua Vick. That name is in your medicine cabinet tonight. Now look at what's inside it. Menthol, eucalyptus, and camphor. The same camphor from number 8. The same camphor from the whiskey on the forehead in number 7. She was mixing that in her kitchen before he ever bottled it. They didn't discover anything. They showed up late, and they showed up with a label. Ask anybody from this generation what they remember about Vicks, and they won't say menthol. They'll tell you about the palm of a warm hand on their chest in the middle of the night, socks pulled on over their feet, a voice above them in the dark low, saying it over and over. Breathe, baby, breathe. The remedy was never the salve. Everything you just heard lived in one place, her head. None of it was written down, but there were things she did keep, right out in the open. The bacon grease can by the stove, never empty. The coffee can of buttons. The bread bags, folded inside another bread bag. And the blue tin of Danish cookies. No child in this community ever opened expecting cookies. If you're laughing right now, it's because you know what was in there. None of that was being cheap. Every one of those things was there for a reason. And not all the reasons are funny. Some will hurt when you understand them. 25 things black families never threw away. And why? It's there on your screen.